Welcome to MysteryCom. Tonight, we'll hear stories about Area 51. You'll hear these tales with the sound of rain to help you fall asleep. So sit back, get comfortable, and let's begin. I'm 36 now. Back then, I was just a young mechanic working odd jobs around the Nevada test range. Nothing glamorous. I fixed trucks, refueled generators, and kept tools running. Ordinary work. I wasn't the type to chase lights in the sky. I had bills, a family, and a bad back from bending under hoods all day. So why share this now? Because I'm tired of carrying it. Because every night I wake up at the same hour, drenched in sweat, sure that light is about to break through my window. I tell myself it was stress, or a trick of the desert air, but the scar on my wrist says otherwise. It was late August 1957. The desert was cooling down after a blistering day, the kind of heat that makes metal smell like it's burning. By evening the air turned sharp and dry, and the stars came out clear as glass. You don't see skies like that anywhere else. I wasn't alone. My friend Ray was with me. He was older, a veteran, steady hands and a sharp tongue. We were heading back from the edge of Groom Lake after checking on some equipment. Nothing unusual, just two men in an old truck, joking about how the pay was never worth the dust in our lungs. Locals already whispered about strange lights near the dry lake. Some said it was secret planes. Others swore it was something not from here. I never paid much attention. Folklore didn't mean much when you were just trying to make rent. Still, I remember Ray saying once, half serious, if we ever see something, we keep our mouths shut. Men disappear for less around here. That night, the first odd thing was small. The truck radio gave out a crackle, like someone scraping a nail across metal. Then the engine coughed. I smacked the dash, muttered, and it steadied again. Ray laughed. Old junk heap. But a few minutes later, the headlights dimmed for no reason. Out in the desert, with no street lamps for miles. That'll raise the hair on your arms. I tried to laugh it off. Probably a loose wire. He didn't answer. He was staring out at the sky. I followed his gaze. At first I thought it was just another bright star. But stars don't drift sideways, slow and deliberate, then freeze dead still. Satellite, I said, though my voice cracked. He shook his head. They don't move like that. We went quiet. Even the desert went quiet. Crickets, gone. Wind, gone. It was like someone had turned down the world. My chest tightened. The silence wasn't natural. I could hear my own blood in my ears. I looked at the dashboard clock. 10:35. Ray checked his watch. It read 10:20. Your watch is slow, I muttered. No, he said. Yours is fast. We stared at each other, neither sure what that meant. Then it happened. A sharp flash lit up the truck cab, white, blue, and cold. My ears popped like I'd climbed a mountain too fast. The air felt heavy, pressing down on my chest. Ray whispered, Jesus. And just like that, the desert was swallowed in dead silence. That's where it all began. I wanted to tell myself it was just lightning, maybe even a flare test. But the sky stayed clear, stars sharp, no clouds anywhere. My breath came out fast and shallow. My palms stuck to the wheel. Ray leaned forward against the glass. Tell me you see that too. I swallowed hard. Yeah, I see it. The light wasn't a flash anymore. It had become a steady glow hanging low above the basin. At first it looked white, then it shifted, soft amber around the edges, then back to pale. It didn't flicker like plane lights. It didn't move like anything I'd ever seen. My mind scrambled for an answer. A jet? A test graft? Maybe a trick of the atmosphere. But my gut knew better. My chest buzzed like static. My skin prickled. I tried to breathe slow, but every breath caught halfway. Too low for a star, Ray muttered. His voice sounded flat, almost swallowed by the silence. The thing drifted, slow and smooth, maybe half a mile out. It stopped dead, then without warning slid to the left like it weighed nothing. No curve, no arc, just instant change. I gripped the wheel harder. My teeth ached from clenching. Ray slapped the dash. "That's no plane." The truck engine sputtered. Then it died. The dash lights went black. I twisted the key. Nothing. Just a hollow click. The radio gave a burst of static, high and sharp, then silence again. My watch ticked fast, then froze. I tapped it. The second hand jerked, spun half a turn, then stopped. "Don't move," Ray whispered. Like I could. My whole body felt locked in place. My throat was dry, my tongue heavy. The glow brightened. It tilted, almost like it turned to face us. That thought made my stomach drop. It was wrong. It felt aware. The desert around us was still. No wind. No insects. Even the dogs from the ranch miles out had gone quiet. I whispered, "It's watching us." Ray didn't answer. His face was pale, eyes wide, lips pressed tight. The light pulsed once, then again. A beam slid down from the underside, thin and pale like a searchlight that didn't spread. It swept across the desert floor. Sand and scrub lit up in that strange glow, but no shadow formed. When it touched the truck, my chest locked tight. The air turned heavy, pressing in like deep water. My ears rang sharp. I tried to lift my hand, but my arm wouldn't respond. My body shook, but I couldn't move. Ray gasped beside me, short and panicked. But he didn't move either. The beam lingered on us. My eyes watered from the brightness. I couldn't blink. My heart hammered in my chest so hard it hurt. Then everything blinked out. Darkness. When I came to, I was slumped over the wheel. My throat burned, my head pounding. The truck lights were back on. The engine idled soft, like nothing had happened. I blinked hard. The stars overhead had shifted. Hours must have passed. I turned to Ray. He was still in the seat, gripping the dash so hard his knuckles were white. His face was wet with sweat. He stared straight ahead, wide-eyed. I croaked out, "What? What time is it?" He lifted his wrist slow, like it weighed 100 pounds. His watch was dead. I looked at the dash clock. 2:27. It had been 10:35 the last time I checked. Almost 4 hours gone. Ray whispered, voice shaking. "We lost time." I couldn't answer. My chest felt hollow. My hands shook against the wheel. I looked out across the desert, desperate to see anything. Nothing but empty night. No glow, no beam, no sound. Just stillness. And in that silence, the memory burned into my mind. That tilt, that moment it turned toward us like it knew. We didn't speak for a long time. The truck just idled, low and steady, like it had never died at all. My hands were trembling on the wheel. My shirt was damp with sweat, though the desert air had turned cold. Finally, Ray said, almost a whisper, "Do you feel sick?" I nodded. My stomach rolled, a dull nausea that wouldn't fade. My head throbbed, every sound too sharp. Even my skin felt wrong, hot in places like I'd been sunburned. We climbed out of the truck on shaky legs. The night smelled metallic, sharp in my nose, like ozone after lightning. A few yards away, the sand looked scorched. Darker, almost black, in a rough circle. Some of the brush at the edges had curled in on itself, leaves brittle. Ray crouched down, reached out, then stopped. His hand shook. I said, "Don't touch it." He pulled back fast. Neither of us wanted to be closer. We got back in the truck. I turned the key, half expecting nothing. But the engine caught, smooth, like nothing had happened. The drive back was quiet. The road stretched endless, headlights tumbling through the dark. Every so often Ray muttered to himself, but I couldn't make out the words. My thoughts kept circling the missing hours. What happened at that time? Where were we? When we reached the station, 2 men were waiting. Military police. They flagged us down before we even parked. Their questions were clipped, practiced. Where had we been? What had we seen? Why were we late? I tried to explain the truck trouble, but one of them just stared, expression blank, as if measuring me. Later, when I checked, the dash clock was still frozen at 2:27. My watch never worked again. The next day, the scorched patch was gone, bulldozed flat, like it had never existed. Ray swore he saw trucks out there before dawn, headlights sweeping over the basin. When I asked about the radar logs, one of the techs just shook his head. "Nothing last night," he said. "Clean sweep." But I'd seen the blip. I'd seen the light. Word spread anyway. A few others had seen a glow over the range, but official chatter dismissed it. High-altitude test plane, they said. Or Venus, low on the horizon. Some even laughed, calling it desert fever. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to write it off. But how do you explain 4 hours gone? The dead watches. The burns on my arms. Ray stopped talking about it. He grew quiet, jumpy. Every time the subject came up, he'd just shake his head and walk away. I tried to forget too, but the silence of that night never left me. That heavy, pressing quiet, like the world was holding its breath. And that last image burned into me, the way it tilted, deliberate, like it noticed us. My name is Marcus Hale. I am 33 years old, and back in 2011 I was an avionics technician stationed at Nellis Air Force Base. I fixed radar systems for long shifts, and when I wasn't working, I spent my hours tearing down motorcycles in the garage. That was my rhythm, my ordinary life. I never planned on carrying a story like this. But what happened that night has pressed against my mind every day since. I've lived with the effects, migraines that flare without warning, dreams where I wake to blinding light, and the scar on my left forearm that burns when the memory pushes too close. It looks like a burn line, but I've never burned myself there. I don't tell many people, but I need to get it out. The night was October 12th, 2011, just past 1:45 in the morning. Out near Groom Lake Road, the open desert stretched in every direction. The sky was cold and clear, the kind that makes stars look close enough to reach. The air was sharp and dry. A half-moon laid pale light across the scrub and sand. I wasn't alone. With me was Reyes, a crew chief I worked with, 29 and sharp as a blade. He liked to smirk at things he didn't trust. A civilian friend rode along too, curious about the stories. He'd heard about watching the lights from Tickaboo Valley and wanted to see for himself. We had no plan beyond stargazing, swapping stories, and maybe catching a glimpse of one of those test flights everyone whispered about. That desert carries its own folklore. Truckers speak of lights that dance along the ridges. Old locals warn the place eats time. I never put much stock in it, but I should have. The stakes were simple but heavy. We were off-duty, so getting caught near the perimeter could have meant questions, maybe trouble with the base. Safety mattered too. The desert isn't kind when you wander, and deeper than that, there was sanity. If what I saw that night was real, then the world isn't what I thought it was. The first odd detail was sound. Not a jet's roar, nothing familiar, just a low hum, like pressure moving through the air. It sat heavy in my chest. Reyes smirked. "That's your top-secret drone, right?" We laughed, but the sound had weight. At first I wanted to dismiss it. Maybe a C-130 out late, or a flare test. That's what my training told me to log if anyone asked. But then the smaller things started to stack. I checked my watch, stuck at 1:46. My friend cursed as his phone battery dropped dead in his hand. The dash clock in Reyes's truck blinked nonsense, random characters sliding across. I tried to shake it off. I told myself it was coincidence. Bad batteries. A bad clock. But then my ears popped hard, like we'd climbed fast in altitude, only we hadn't moved. The desert wind, which had been brushing cool against my face, stopped. Just gone. Then came the light. A pale green wash rolled across Groom Lake. It wasn't bright, like headlights. It was soft, yet it swallowed the horizon in silence. My skin prickled as it passed, and I caught myself holding my breath. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong, and that was only the beginning. My training told me to log it as a glitch. Bad gear, bad readings, nothing more. That's what we were taught. Always find the technical fault before you call it something else. But my gut told me I was lying to myself. My skin buzzed like it was holding static. I wiped my palms on my jeans, but they stayed damp. The night was cold, but sweat rolled down my back. My chest rose shallow, breaths tight, like I was bracing for something I didn't understand. I whispered, "Tell me you see that." Reyes cut me short. "Shut up. Don't point." His voice was low, almost shaking. That wasn't like him. My civilian friend was already staring wide-eyed, lips moving without sound. All three of us locked on the same patch of sky. And we weren't the only ones. Down the road, a truck had pulled to the shoulder. Its driver stood outside, head tilted back, frozen like the rest of us. Then it came into view. Not a saucer. Nothing smooth or rounded. It was a black triangle, sharp-edged, massive. A faint bluish corona shimmered underneath, like it was balanced on light. My brain scrambled to size it. Maybe 150 feet across. The altitude was low, under 1,000 feet, but it was hard to tell. The silence was the part that sank into me. Something that big shouldn't move without sound. I kept waiting for the roar of an engine. Nothing. Just the faint ringing in my ears. It moved in ways that broke rules I'd spent my career studying. It slid sideways without banking, as if inertia didn't exist. Then it shot straight up so fast it blurred, only to stop dead and hover again. My breath caught every time it shifted. My mind kept saying, "Impossible, impossible." That was when the truck died. The engine coughed once and cut off. The dash went black. I heard my friend curse, fumbling with the keys. The GPS blinked. No fix. The radio hissed static, and even my wristwatch face gave one last flicker before going blank. From miles away, a dog's howl carried thin across the desert. Then another, then a chorus. Every insect, every rustle in the scrub went silent. The taste in my mouth turned metallic, like blood and pennies. Reyes didn't move. His jaw was locked tight, eyes wide, hands clenched on his knees. My friend scrambled in panic, twisting the key again and again. The truck gave nothing back. Then a pivot. The moment that still freezes me in my sleep. A beam dropped from the craft. Not wide, not soft. A single white column, narrow and solid-looking, brighter than a searchlight but sharper, like it cut the air. It fell directly over us. My lungs locked. My body wouldn't obey me. I tried to shift, to yell, but nothing came. My vision tunneled, shrinking until only the beam existed. Every nerve screamed, but I couldn't move. Then, nothing. When I blinked again, the stars had shifted higher in the sky. My head pounded like I'd been underwater too long. The truck's clock glowed at 4:12 a.m. 2 hours gone. The craft was still above us, tilting slightly, as if watching. The beam blinked out, leaving the desert dark again. In the windshield's reflection, I saw my own face staring back, pale and frozen, as if I hadn't moved at all. And I couldn't tell if it was me or something looking through me. When the beam vanished, I felt like my body had been dropped back into itself. My chest heaved, air rushing in ragged. My head throbbed, temples pounding like I'd been hit. My skin prickled raw like I'd stood in the sun all day. I looked down at my arm. A faint red line burned across the skin, straight as if cut by heat. It stung, but not like a scrape. More like something under the skin itself. Reyes finally moved. He checked his watch, frowned hard, then swore. It jumped. 2 hours. Mine was still stuck at 1:46, frozen like nothing had happened. The truck's clock glowed 4:12, steady now, as if mocking us. My friend rubbed his eyes and muttered, We lost time, we lost time. He tried to restart the engine. It sputtered, then caught like nothing had ever been wrong. We stepped out onto the sand, and that's when I saw it. A faint pattern scorched into the ground. A triangle shape pressed into the roadside dirt. Not burned deep, but the brush around it leaned outward, as if pushed by force. The desert was silent except for our breathing. Then headlights cut through the distance. A black SUV rolled past, slow. It had no plates. The driver didn't stop, just looked once and kept going. The sound of its tires faded until it was gone. None of us spoke for a while. When we finally climbed back in the truck, the air inside felt heavier, like something unseen was riding with us. The next morning, the news ran a short piece. Routine test flights out of the base. Nothing unusual. I wanted to laugh, but it caught in my throat. My friend's camera, the one he had tried to film with, was dead. Later, when it powered on, every file was wiped. The screen froze if he tried to review. He smashed it a month later. Reyes never spoke of it again, not on base. He pulled me aside once, voice low. "Don't bring it up here. They listen." The civilian friend, he told a few people, but when they mocked him he shut down, said he was done. Skeptics had answers. Stealth drone tests. Atmospheric tricks. Electrical interference. I nodded, let them talk. But drones don't steal hours from your life. Flares don't scorch sand into clean geometry. And tricks of light don't stop your body from breathing. For weeks after, I'd wake in the night drenched, a flash of white light still in my eyes. The migraines came. Sometimes I'd catch the smell of burnt metal in places it didn't belong. What stays with me most isn't the beam or the missing time. It's the way the desert looked after. Empty, calm, as if nothing had ever happened. The faint glow of that corona fading into the black sky, like it had slipped behind a curtain we weren't meant to see through. And I wonder, were we chosen? Or were we just unlucky, caught standing in the wrong place at the wrong moment? The last image in my mind is that glow, swallowed by the desert night, leaving me with one question that still haunts me. My name is Mark. I worked nights in the desert back in the mid-90s, a simple security role near the ranges outside Groom Lake. Nothing glamorous. Mostly long hours, silence, and the occasional coyote calling in the distance. I wasn't chasing mysteries. I was just paying the bills. That night it was late, close to 2 a.m. The air was sharp and dry, cool for Nevada, and the stars looked so close they felt like pinpricks against the black sky. I remember rubbing dust from my eyes, telling myself to stay awake. Beside me was Carl, another guard. He liked to talk to keep alert. Little jokes about the tourists in Rachel who claimed they saw aliens on every hilltop. We were just 2 men in a truck, headlights cutting a pale path across the gravel. The desert felt endless. That's when the first odd thing happened. The radio cracked, a burst of static that made us both flinch. I tapped the set, thought maybe it was a loose wire. Then it went quiet. Too quiet. Even the coyotes stopped. I noticed it because the silence felt heavy, like a blanket pressed against my ears. "Lose the signal?" Carl asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah," I muttered, but my voice shook. We kept moving, wheels crunching. Then I saw it. A faint pulse on the horizon. Just a point of light at first, not moving like a plane should. My stomach tightened. Carl squinted. "Probably a flare," he said, almost laughing. I wanted to agree. But the light didn't flicker or fall. It held steady, then dimmed, then returned, brighter, like it was breathing. I looked down at my watch. It was off, 5 minutes ahead somehow. I knew I hadn't touched it. My phone was dead too, battery drained without warning. I told myself I was tired. Desert tricks. But then my ears popped, sudden pressure like climbing fast in an elevator. Carl stopped joking. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. The air shifted, dry dust mixing with something metallic. A taste on the tongue, sharp and wrong. We sat there, staring. The light grew larger. My chest felt hollow. Then, a flash. White, silent. The desert went black again. For a moment I thought I'd gone blind. My breath caught in my throat, palms slick on the steering wheel. Carl's hand gripped my shoulder hard, too hard. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Something was out there. And the night was no longer just night. The silence stretched until it felt like my heartbeat was the only sound left. My throat was dry, every swallow loud in my ears. Carl leaned forward, knuckles white on the dash, eyes locked on that pulse of light. "Still think it's a flare?" I asked, but it came out a whisper. He didn't answer. The light swelled, edges sharpening into a triangular outline. At first I thought it was high, maybe a plane turning in the distance. But then it stopped. Just stopped. No drift, no sound. Dead, still in the desert sky. My stomach twisted. Planes don't freeze mid-air. The triangle slid forward, so smooth it almost looked like it was gliding on glass. 3 lights along its edges, pale and sunken, like embers glowing in a stove. Not bright, but steady. The air around us seemed to thrum. "Tell me you see that too," I said, voice cracking. "I see it," Carl muttered. "I don't like it. I wanted to move, to drive, to do something. But my hands wouldn't let go of the wheel. Every nerve screamed to stay still. The radio hissed again, high-pitched like feedback, then cut off. The dash lights blinked once and died. Our truck idled, then coughed, then quit completely. The desert swallowed us in silence. Carl slapped the radio. Nothing. He looked at me, eyes wide. "It's killing the power." I shook my head. No, maybe just a short. But I didn't believe myself. The craft drifted closer. I could make out its shape now. Flat, black, edges sharp against the stars. Big. Bigger than anything I'd ever seen in the air. Maybe the length of a football field, maybe more. I couldn't measure. My chest felt hollow, like the air itself was being pulled away. The triangle tilted slightly, one corner lowering, almost like it was looking down. I swear I felt it focus on us. My scalp tingled, hair prickling. The metallic tang in the air thickened, sharp in the nose, bitter on the tongue. Carl's breath hitched. "We need to get inside," he whispered. I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were filled with lead. The thing hung over us, silent, massive. It made no sense. Jets scream. Helicopters chop the air. This was nothing, just a void gliding across the stars. Then it shifted again, a movement so fast it blurred. One instant overhead. The next it was 50 yards to the left, hovering. My chest seized. "That's impossible," I muttered. Carl's hand shook as he pointed. "Planes don't do that." We both stared as the triangle stopped again, still and silent. Then it tilted once more, and a pale beam of blue light spilled down across the sand. Thin but sharp, like it cut the night open. The beam swept slowly, brushing across the desert floor. My breath caught when it slid across the hood of our truck and stopped on me. Every muscle in my body locked. My chest burned as if the air had been yanked from my lungs. My hands gripped the wheel, frozen. Skin buzzing, nerves on fire, but I couldn't move. Carl's voice cracked beside me. "Mark, move." I couldn't. I was trapped inside myself, watching the light hold me in place. The seconds stretched into forever. My ears rang, pressure building behind my eyes. The world dimmed, narrowed, until all that existed was that light. Then, darkness. When I opened my eyes again, I was slumped forward, forehead on the wheel. My body felt drained, heavy. Carl was shaking my shoulder hard. "Mark, wake up! Look!" I sat up, gasping. The stars above had shifted. The triangle was gone. I blinked at my watch. It was 3 hours ahead. 3 hours. Gone. Carl's voice was low, almost broken. Where the hell did it go? The desert gave no answer, only silence. The truck coughed back to life like nothing had happened. The dash lights glowed steady. The radio clicked on, a weather report droning as if the last 3 hours had never been cut out of our lives. But my body told me different. My head throbbed, sharp behind the eyes. My stomach turned with waves of nausea. Even my skin felt wrong, prickling as though it had been burned in places I couldn't see. Carl leaned against the open door, pale and sweating. "Mark, it's morning." I looked east. The sky had already started paling, thin streaks of dawn rising over the desert ridges. My chest tightened. We had gone from a little past 2 a.m. to nearly 6, and neither of us remembered the hours in between. We climbed out slowly. The air smelled scorched, a burnt tang that clung to the dust. Just ahead of the truck, the sand looked blackened. 3 impressions sunk into the ground like something heavy had pressed down. Not boots. Not tires. Perfect triangles, shallow but clear. I crouched, fingers brushing the marks. The dirt was still warm. Carl shook his head, whispering to himself, "They're gonna bury this." He was right. Within the hour, 2 military police vehicles rolled up, lights off, silent. Men stepped out with cameras, snapping photos of the marks. The truck, even us. No words, no explanations. Just orders. "Go back inside. Write nothing unusual in your logs," one of them said flatly. We tried to argue, but their stares cut that short. They took the radio tapes, even pulled the spare battery out of Carl's pocket recorder. Everything is gone. Later, the official line came down. Experimental drone test. That was the story. Anyone who asked, we were supposed to say we saw lights from a test. But the logs didn't match. The truck's mileage didn't match. Our watches were all off by hours. Nothing added up. For weeks I felt sick. Headaches, constant fatigue. I couldn't shake the metallic taste in my mouth. Some nights I'd wake up sweating, remembering the blue light locking me in place, unable to breathe. Carl stopped talking about it completely. He said he wanted to keep his job, keep his sanity. Maybe he was right, but I couldn't forget. Not with that image burned into me. The black triangle, silent against the stars, holding us like ants under a magnifying glass. People laugh when I tell the story. They say it was a stealth bomber, or a weather balloon, or just exhaustion in the desert night. Maybe they're right, but I still see the scorched sand in my dreams. I still feel the weight of those missing hours pressing down. And when the wind is still and the desert is quiet, I sometimes think I can hear it again, the silence before it came. I can't prove what we saw. I can only tell you what happened. That night changed me, because once you've looked up and seen something impossible hovering over you, the sky is never just the sky again. My name is Daniel. I work with heavy equipment in the desert, the kind of job that leaves your clothes stiff with dust and your hands cracked by the dry air. I am not a storyteller. I never wanted to be the guy who talks about lights in the sky. But I can't shake what I saw out there, and I figure keeping it inside will eat me alive. It was late summer of 1996, a Friday night. I was driving back after finishing a week of contract work near the Nevada test site. The road was long, dark, empty. The desert air cooled quick after sunset, and I had the windows cracked. The smell of sage and dust drifted in, sharp and dry. Out here, once the sun goes down, it feels like the whole world folds into silence. I wasn't completely alone. 2 co-workers followed in another truck, about a quarter-mile back. We'd convoyed before, a safety thing in case of breakdowns. The 3 of us had worked together long enough that we didn't talk much after hours. Just get home, sleep, repeat. The stretch we drove skirted near Groom Lake. Everyone in the area knows the name, even if they never admit it out loud. People joke about aliens in diners, but there's an edge to the laughter. You hear whispers of lights, jets that move wrong, guards who don't smile. I'd laughed too. It always felt like a campfire story to pass time. That night, I learned different. It started subtle. The CB radio crackled with static. Not the usual weak reception, more like a hiss that drowned out everything. I tapped the side of the unit, thinking the wires had shaken loose. Nothing changed. My buddy in the rear truck keyed in, but his voice was chopped and broken. We gave up trying after a few attempts. At first I thought nothing of it. These radios failed often, but then my headlights dipped, like the battery had sagged, even though the truck was running fine. They came back on their own a second later. I remember gripping the steering wheel tighter. My hands felt clammy. That was when I noticed the silence. Before, I'd been half listening to the desert, coyotes in the distance, wind pushing sand along the shoulder. Suddenly, it all stopped. No wind, no animals. Just the sound of my own engine. The pressure in my ears shifted, sharp like when a plane climbs too fast. I swallowed, trying to clear it. The sensation didn't fade. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe weather, maybe altitude. But deep down my stomach tightened. Something wasn't right. In the mirror I saw the other truck's headlights flicker too. They flashed once, dimmed, then steadied. My coworker later swore he thought his battery was dying. I slowed down, rolling the window all the way open. The night air hit me cold, carrying the mineral smell of the desert. I leaned out just slightly, scanning the stars. Perfectly clear sky, every constellation sharp. But then one point of light caught me. It wasn't moving like a plane, wasn't blinking like anything I knew. At first I thought it was just a star. Then it shifted. A small slide across the sky, too quick, then still again. My throat went dry. "Tell me you see that," I whispered to myself. The CB crackled once more. My co-worker's voice, broken but clear enough, said the same thing. "You see that too?" That was the moment the jokes ended. No one laughed. No one offered explanations. We all just stared ahead into the dark desert night, waiting for whatever came next. And then it happened. A flash of pale blue light rippled across the horizon, silent but sharp enough to make me blink. My ears popped again, harder this time. My heart kicked in my chest like I'd run a mile. The desert held its breath, and I gripped the wheel, knowing deep down we weren't alone out there. The light hovered, faint at first, then brighter, until I couldn't pretend it was a star anymore. My palms were slick on the steering wheel. I slowed the truck to a crawl. Gravel popped under the tires, loud in the stillness. Behind me, the second truck did the same. I saw their headlights dip as they braked. For a moment we just idled there. Both vehicles pointed into nothing but desert blackness. The light shifted again. Not drifting like a plane, not arcing like a meteor. It slid sideways across the sky, stopped hard, then slid back. Clean lines, no curve. My chest tightened. I cracked the door, stepped out onto the dirt. The night air bit colder than it had a minute before. I smelled the dry dust rising around my boots. From behind me, one of the guys called out, voice low, "You seeing this?" I nodded without turning. Yeah. We stood like that, necks craned, not speaking. The silence pressed heavy. No crickets, no wind. Just our breath clouding in the desert chill. The object pulsed. A blue glow that rolled down its edges like liquid. The color shifted, faint white, then deep red, then back to blue. Each change made my stomach dip, like pressure rolling through the air. I swallowed hard. That's not right. Nobody argued. The thing moved closer, though I couldn't say how. 1 second it looked far. The next it loomed bigger, sharper. My sense of distance felt scrambled. The glow spread across the ground, faint but wide, painting the rocks with an eerie sheen. Then everything went wrong. My truck sputtered, engine coughing like it had swallowed dust. Dashboard lights blinked off. Headlights died. Behind me, I heard the second truck stall too. Both of us at the same time. "Jesus," one of the guys muttered, fumbling with his ignition. I tried mine, but the key might as well have been plastic. Dead silence. Even the CB sat lifeless, no static, no hum. A chill ran through me. It wasn't just the cold night. It felt like the air itself had drained out, like standing too high in the mountains. My ears throbbed. My vision swam for a second. The light pulsed again. And then, like it had eyes, it dropped lower. The object descended with no sound at all. No wind, no rumble. Just there, maybe a few 100 feet up. A triangle, sharp edges, each corner tipped with that same blue-white glow. The surface looked metallic, but fluid, like it shifted when I stared too long. "Tell me I'm not crazy," I whispered. "You're not," the other guy said. His voice cracked halfway through. We all froze, watching. Nobody dared move. The triangle hung over us, steady, like it was choosing. Then, without warning, a thin beam of pale light dropped straight down. It wasn't harsh like a spotlight. It was softer, almost a mist, but it hit the dirt and spread out until it swallowed us. My chest seized. My legs refused to move. I tried to lift my arm, nothing. I could only roll my eyes, side to side, catching the same terror mirrored in the faces of my friends. Time slipped strange. I don't know if it lasted seconds or minutes. My heartbeat slowed, each thud echoing in my skull. Then black. When I opened my eyes, I was still standing in the same spot. Same desert road. Same dead trucks. Only the stars had shifted further west. Hours had passed. I blinked, throat raw. My mouth tasted metallic, like pennies. My watch read 2 hours earlier than the dashboard clock. Both were wrong. The object was gone. Nothing above us. Nothing on the horizon. Just empty desert sky. One of the guys whispered, "What the hell just happened?" I didn't answer, because I had no answer. The only sound was the cold wind finally returning, sweeping across the desert like it had never stopped. We didn't talk much at first. Just silence, heavy and stunned. As we tried our ignitions again, nothing. Both trucks sat dead on the road. My hands shook on the key, knuckles pale in the dashboard glow that never came back. One of the guys gagged suddenly, bent over, vomiting into the dirt. The other rubbed his temples hard, whispering, "My head, my head." I felt it too, a pounding ache deep behind my eyes, along with a wave of nausea that left my stomach hollow. I checked my watch again. 2 hours gone, just erased. My dashboard clock said 3. His wristwatch said midnight. None of it lined up. The desert around us carried a new smell. Not sage or dust. Metallic, burnt, sharp like the sting of a welding torch. I walked a few feet off the road, drawn by a faint shimmer on the ground. There, in the sand, was a wide circular patch, darker, almost glassy. The edges looked scorched, like heat had pressed the earth flat. I crouched, touched it with my fingertips. Still warm. Before we could say much, headlights flared in the distance. A single vehicle moving fast. We all stiffened. Within minutes, a dark jeep rolled up, no markings, just 2 men inside. They wore desert camo, faces stern. They didn't ask questions. They didn't look surprised. "Move along," one said flatly. "We can't," I tried, voice cracked. "Trucks are dead." The man leaned in close, voice low but sharp. "You didn't see anything. Do you understand?" The way he looked at me made my chest lock. I nodded without speaking. They stayed until both our trucks suddenly roared back to life, like someone had flipped a hidden switch. The men waved us on, no further word. We drove, silent, each of us pale, gripping the wheel, checking the mirrors like something might follow. The next morning, I went back alone. Same spot. But the burned patch was gone. Bulldozed flat, fresh tire marks across the sand, like nothing had ever been there. Later that week, the local paper ran a short piece. Test flares mistaken for unusual lights. That was it. No mention of engines dying. No mention of missing hours. No mention of us. When I tried to talk, people smirked. My co-workers rolled their eyes. Even my family said maybe I'd been tired. Maybe I dreamed half of it. But my head still hurt. My stomach still twisted at night. And the memory still replayed, over and over, the triangle hanging above, the beam of light freezing me in place, the empty hours I'll never get back. Sometimes I wonder if it was all for nothing, just an accident of timing, being in the wrong place when something passed through. Other times I wonder if it was deliberate, if whatever was inside that craft saw us, chose us, then let us go. The desert looks normal now, just sand, brush, and sky. But in my mind I still see that blue glow cutting across the horizon. I still feel the air vanish, thick and crushing. Every time I drive that stretch I glance up, scanning the stars, waiting for that silent triangle to drop again. My name is Kevin. I make my living running maintenance checks on remote equipment scattered along the Nevada highways. It is not the kind of job that makes for stories. Most nights are just empty road, paperwork, and the low hum of the truck engine. This night was August 14th, 2009, a little after 9 p.m. The sky was sharp and cloudless, stars scattered thick across the desert. I was on Highway 375 with two co-workers heading toward Rachel after finishing up late. The air coming through the cracked window carried the cool smell of dust and sage, a welcome change after the heat of the day. The guy in the back seat had nodded off, head against the glass. The one in the passenger seat was working the radio dial, trying to pull in anything but static. I kept my hands tight on the wheel, alert in that way you get when you know how far you are from help. Out here, a breakdown can mean hours waiting, with nothing but silence pressing in. Rachel is a strange little place. Folks will laugh about aliens over pie at the diner, but then tell you about the lights they have seen out by Tickaboo Valley. Objects too fast, too quiet, too sharp in the night sky. I had always treated it as small-town lore, a way to pass the time. The first sign that night wasn't the sky. It was the radio. A clear country song cut off mid-verse, replaced by a burst of static. My co-worker gave the dial a smack, then smirked. Guess the aliens are changing the channel. We chuckled, but the sound felt thin. That was when I saw it. A light on the horizon, low and steady. Too bright, too fixed. I told myself it was just a plane, but then a second one blinked into view beside it. The passenger leaned closer to the windshield. Probably jets. They run night drills out here all the time. But jets move. Jets make noise. These didn't. The two lights hung there, silent, like nails pinned in the sky. The truck clock flickered, then reset itself to 12. My phone screen dimmed in the cup holder, the battery suddenly dropping low. A chill crawled across my arms as every hair stood up. That was when I noticed. The desert had gone dead quiet. No wind in the brush. No coyote calls. Nothing. The passenger shifted uncomfortably. The guy in the back blinked awake, rubbed his eyes, and asked what was wrong. None of us spoke. We just stared. Then one of the lights pulsed. A single, sharp glow that spilled over the highway like a flashbulb. My ears popped hard, pressure slamming into my head. My chest felt heavy. The steering wheel gave a faint hum beneath my hands. The silence deepened, crushing, wrong. The air smelled metallic, sharp like ozone before a storm. And then the whole desert lit up. One burst of white light that swallowed everything. The flash faded, but the lights were still there. Only now they were closer. Too close. I gripped the wheel tighter, heart slamming in my chest. My palms were slick with sweat. I didn't want to say it out loud, but the thought pressed hard in my head. This isn't normal. The passenger leaned forward until his forehead nearly touched the glass. "That's not a plane," he whispered. His voice cracked. I nodded without meaning to. My throat felt too dry to speak. The two lights shifted, slow at first, then with sudden precision. They formed the base of a triangle. And then I saw it, the outline. Not just lights, but something massive, blacker than the night sky itself, blotting out the stars above. It wasn't just a trick of my eyes. We all saw it. My stomach turned cold. How big is that thing? The truck engine sputtered. Dashboard lights flickered, then dimmed. The radio clicked off with a faint hiss. My coworker slammed the side of the console. What the hell? I eased my foot on the gas, but the truck dragged, like the air itself was pulling against us. The third light appeared above the others, locking the shape in place. A triangle. Enormous. Silent. A faint blue glow rippled along its edges like heat waves. "Tell me you see that," I finally forced out. The guy in back leaned forward, face pale. "I see it. Oh God, I see it." I tried to breathe steady, but each inhale came shallow, chest tight. The air inside the cab felt heavier, like static pressing down. Then it moved. Not forward, not backward. Straight down. The massive shape dropped, smooth and impossible, until it hung what felt like a few 100 feet above the road. I could see details now, sharp angles, no sound at all, like it was gliding on nothing. The desert was dead silent, the kind of silence that eats up every other sound. My ears buzzed with pressure. The air smelled metallic, sharp like burning wires. The passenger's hand clutched the dashboard. "Drive, Mark. Just drive." I couldn't. My foot pressed uselessly on the gas, but the engine coughed and died. We rolled to a stop in the middle of that empty highway. All three of us sat frozen. The shape hovered above, too close, too real. My eyes watered from staring at it, but I couldn't look away. Then a sound. Low, humming, deep enough to rattle in my ribs. It didn't come from outside. It came through us. A column of light snapped down from the craft, white-blue, blinding. It swallowed the truck whole. My body locked. My arms went stiff, fingers welded to the steering wheel. I couldn't lift my head. I couldn't even close my eyes. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. I wanted to yell, to curse, to pray, anything, but no sound came out. The pressure built in my ears until I thought they would burst. My chest felt pinned, as if something pressed down on me from every direction. And then, nothing. Black. I blinked, or thought I blinked, and suddenly the light was gone. The humming had stopped. The truck engine was running again, steady, like it had never quit. My hands were still locked on the wheel, knuckles white. I snapped a look at the clock. Nearly 2 hours had passed. 2 hours. Gone. The road was empty. The sky was clear. The stars shone again where the massive shadow had been. But we all knew what we had seen. None of us spoke. We just sat there, shaking, breathing heavy, trying to believe we were still in one piece. The desert felt wrong now. Still wrong. The silence deeper, heavier, and I couldn't shake the thought, crawling cold through my mind. It noticed us. I don't remember starting the truck again. I only remember the wheels crunching over the asphalt as we rolled forward, headlights stretching into the empty road. My hands shook on the wheel. My co-workers sat in silence, faces pale, eyes fixed straight ahead like speaking might make it all come back. The nausea hit first, a wave of sickness that made my stomach twist. My head throbbed, temples pounding with each beat of my heart. The guy in the passenger seat pressed a hand to his ears, muttering that they rang so loud he couldn't hear his own voice. The one in back scratched at his arms, and in the glow of the dome light I saw red welts rising on his skin. I glanced at the dashboard clock again. 2 hours missing. The truck clock reset. Our watches all showing different times. None of it matched. When we finally pulled off the road near Rachel, I got out. My legs felt weak, the desert air cooler than before, sharp against my skin. The sagebrush around us looked scorched in patches. One section of gravel glowed faintly under the beam of my flashlight, like a grey ash had settled over it. I reached down, rubbed it between my fingers. It was powdery, metallic, and clung to my skin long after I brushed it away. We stood there for a long time, no one speaking. The silence was heavy, almost expectant. By morning, word had spread. The sheriff showed up first, then a pair of men in unmarked vehicles claiming to be from the Air Force. They asked us the same questions again and again. What time? How big? How long? Their tone wasn't curious. It was sharp, practiced, like they already knew the answers. Later that week, someone told me the sheriff never filed a report. The dashcam card from my truck wouldn't play, as if the files had been wiped clean. When I asked about it, the dealership said the unit looked fried. The official story: training exercises, flares, a weather balloon. One man even said we had mistaken Venus. But none of that explained the truck dying, the lost hours, the burns on my co-workers' arms. I tried not to talk about it. The few times I did, people either laughed or leaned in with wide eyes, waiting for me to tell them about little green men. I stopped trying after that, but I can't shake the memory. Sometimes, driving that stretch of road, I still see the faint mark on the ground where the brush burned away. I can still smell the sharp metallic air when I think about it. And at night, when the desert goes too still, I feel that pressure in my ears again, just for a moment, and I remember. The image is burned into me, the triangle blotting out the stars, silent, impossible, as if the sky itself had opened. It never felt random. It felt like it turned its attention on us. My name's Thomas. I've never thought of myself as the type to share stories like this. I work as a mechanic, having been at the same shop for years. My life's simple. Fix cars, drink coffee, go home tired. That's it. But what happened out on Highway 375 that night, I can't shake it. It was late spring 2012, a Friday night. I'd just closed the shop when my buddy Sam convinced me to ride out with him to the spot everyone calls the Black Mailbox. That stretch near Rachel, Nevada, right along the extraterrestrial highway. I'd heard about it plenty of times. People pulling over, scanning the sky, claiming they saw lights darting above the desert. I always laughed it off. But Sam wanted company, and I figured, why not? The desert air cooled quick once the sun dropped. I remember the smell of dust, dry sage carried on the wind. The sky was clear, thousands of stars, sharp as glass. Out there, miles from town, there's no light pollution. It's almost too quiet. We parked near the mailbox, which was plastered in stickers and graffiti, and just leaned against the hood of his truck. Sam had brought a thermos of coffee. He poured some into the lid and said, grinning, "All right, let's see a UFO." I laughed, shook my head. I told him, "We'll be out here 2 hours, and the only thing we'll see is a shooting star." Still, I kept glancing up. Couldn't help it. Around 10, a couple from Utah pulled in. They said they'd been camping nearby, heard this was the spot. We all stood around talking. They swapped stories they'd heard. Strange orbs over the mountains, people losing time, phones draining for no reason. I smiled, but inside I thought, if even half of that's true, this place has a weight to it. The first odd thing came just before midnight. The wind died. Completely. No rustle in the brush, no air moving against my skin. Then the insects stopped. No chirping, no distant night calls. It was like the desert muted itself in one breath. Sam frowned, looked at his phone. "Battery just dropped 30%, he muttered. The Utah guy said his watch was off by 10 minutes. Everyone chuckled nervously, brushed it off, but my stomach tightened. I looked up at the ridgeline. A light hung there, low, brighter than any star. At first I figured it was a plane banking. Then it slid sideways. No sound, no trail, just smooth and unnatural. "See that?" I whispered. Sam squinted. "Yeah, probably military." He didn't sound convinced. We all stared. The light shifted again, too sharp to be any aircraft I knew. It pulsed white, then faint blue, like it was breathing. I tried to laugh, but the air felt heavy, pressing on my chest. My ears popped like I'd climbed a mountain too fast. For a second I swore the ground hummed beneath my boots. The Utah woman clutched her husband's arm. "That's not a jet," she said softly. No one argued. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the light blinked out. The desert stayed silent. We looked at each other, no one wanting to be the first to speak. My palms were slick and I rubbed them on my jeans. Sam finally broke the silence. "All right, that was weird." I nodded, but my throat was dry. Every instinct told me we hadn't seen the last of it. I kept scanning the sky, waiting. Something about that empty patch above the ridge made me feel like it was watching us back. And that's when the second anomaly began. The second anomaly started with a low flicker in the sky, like heat lightning without the storm. I squinted, waiting for the rumble of thunder, but nothing followed. Just that faint pulse, high above the ridge. Sam muttered, "There, it's back." The Utah couple pressed closer to their truck. I felt my pulse quicken, palms damp again. I tried to convince myself it was distant aircraft, some test run from the base. But then the light dropped, fast and smooth, stopping dead just above the horizon. No plane I knew could halt like that. The silence got heavier. Even our breaths felt too loud. I whispered, "Tell me you see it moving sideways." The Utah man's voice cracked. "We all see it." The object shifted left, then right, sharp 90-degree angles. Each move was instant, no arc, no momentum. My stomach twisted watching it, like my brain couldn't keep up with the physics. The air grew metallic, sharp in my nose and on my tongue. My ears rang faintly, pressure building like when a plane climbs too fast. I rubbed them, but it didn't help. Then Sam cursed under his breath. His truck engine had gone silent. Not sputtered, not choked, just cut off. The dash lights flickered once, then died. "Try it," I told him. He twisted the key. Nothing, just a dead click. The Utah woman's phone slipped from her hand. "It just shut off," she whispered. She held it up, screen black. I felt my chest tightening, breath shallow. Something was happening around us. Something we couldn't control. Part of me wanted to run into the desert, as if I could escape it on foot. Another part kept me frozen, eyes locked on that light. The object hovered, silent, almost curious. It brightened, white shifting to blue, a steady glow. It looked closer now, maybe a few 100 feet out, hanging low above the scrubland. Sam's voice shook. "That's no aircraft." No damn way. I could barely speak. Words caught in my throat. My mind kept cycling, military drone, weather balloon, some trick. But my gut screamed it was none of those. The Utah couple clung to each other. The woman whispered something I couldn't hear, voice swallowed by the weight of silence. Then it happened. A beam of light dropped from the craft, sharp and pure, hitting the ground just beyond the mailbox. The desert floor glowed white, dust particles dancing in it like sparks. I couldn't move. None of us could. My body stiffened, every muscle locked. My breath felt stuck in my chest. I tried to lift my arm, but it wouldn't obey. Panic shot through me, but my body ignored it. The light swept sideways. It passed over us. For an instant I felt a vibration deep in my bones, like standing near a massive speaker. My vision blurred, the desert spinning out of focus. Then, black. I don't know how long it lasted. When I blinked again, the light was gone. The object was gone. The desert was still and silent. My legs buckled, and I gripped the hood of the truck. My watch read 3 in the morning. The last time I checked, it had been just past midnight. I looked at Sam. His face was pale, sweat dripping down his temples. The Utah couple were staring at each other, eyes wide, lips trembling. None of us said a word. 3 hours, gone. The desert gave no answers. The first thing I noticed was the taste of metal in my mouth. My tongue felt like it had been pressed against a battery. My head throbbed, my stomach rolled. When I tried to steady myself, I realized my legs were trembling so hard I almost dropped to the dirt. Sam groaned beside me, still clutching the dead steering wheel. The Utah couple leaned against their truck, pale, shaking. The woman's eyes brimmed with tears. None of us knew what to say. Finally, Sam whispered, "It's morning, look." The horizon was faintly glowing, the edge of dawn pushing against the desert sky. But it didn't make sense. We had only planned to stay a few hours. My watch said after 3. The couple's clock read almost 4. None of it lined up with when we had first seen the light. I forced myself to walk a few steps toward the mailbox. The air still smelled sharp, almost burnt, like wires singed in a fire. The ground where the beam had struck looked darker, scorched in a clean circle. I bent down, touched the soil. Warm. My hands shook harder. Behind me, Sam finally got the engine to turn. It sputtered weakly, coughed, then caught. The sound of it was almost a relief, grounding us back into something normal. But nothing felt normal. As we packed up, headlights appeared down the road. A county sheriff's car slowed, then stopped near us. The deputy stepped out, asked flatly if we had seen any unusual flares or lights from the Air Force testing range. We all exchanged looks. None of us spoke. The deputy's eyes lingered on the scorch mark by the mailbox, then flicked back to us. His voice dropped lower. "Best you folks head home. Nothing out here worth staying for." Then he got back in his car and drove off without another word. The Utah man muttered, "That was too fast." How'd they know? His wife shook her head, hugged herself tighter. On the ride back, I stared at the dashboard clock. Every few minutes, I checked it against my watch. They stayed out of sync. I couldn't explain it, but I couldn't let it go either. For days afterward, I woke up with headaches, a dull ringing in my ears. My skin felt sunburned in patches, though I hadn't been in the sun long. Sam said he had the same. The Utah couple sent an email weeks later, saying they were having nightmares about blinding white light. We didn't tell many people. The few who knew laughed, called it desert fever or a trick of the eyes. A buddy at the shop told me it was Venus on the horizon. But Venus doesn't shut down engines, doesn't erase 3 hours from your life, doesn't leave the ground warm in the middle of the night. Sometimes I drive past that road again, out toward Rachel. The mailbox is still there, covered in more stickers, more graffiti. Tourists snap pictures. Most of them never see anything. Some do. Me. I can't look at that stretch of sky without feeling the weight in my chest, the silence pressing against my ears. I don't know what we saw. I don't know what happened in those missing hours. But I know it was real. My name's Mark Hollis. I wasn't anyone special. Just a civilian contractor working with defense companies on tech tests, mostly electronics and radar systems. Day in, day out, the same kind of work. I wasn't into UFOs or aliens, honestly. I didn't expect to be part of any crazy story. But on that night, my life turned upside down. I'll never forget it, and I don't think I'll ever get over it. It was late in 1959. Don't ask me for the exact date. I honestly don't remember. I had no reason to remember the date then. It wasn't until much later that I realized that night would change everything. It was just a regular evening out near Reno, Nevada. The place was desolate, with miles of dry, cracked earth stretching out in every direction. Cold wind whistled through the night, and the stars above looked like 1,000 little holes poked in black velvet. The desert quiet, that stillness, you don't really appreciate it until it gets to you. It was the kind of silence that felt unnatural, like the world was holding its breath. We were near the famous Area 51, but I didn't think much of that at the time. Everyone around there had heard the rumors, stories of strange lights, strange happenings, and all the conspiracy theories that came with it. People in town whispered about things in the sky. They talked about mysterious lights, about people disappearing. You know the usual talk. It was hard to ignore. But I wasn't one for gossip. It wasn't my problem. I was out there with a few guys, part of a routine job. It was just me, Jeff, my co-worker, and a couple of guys from the nearby military base. We were running a test, checking some tech we'd been working on for weeks. The kind of work that keeps you up late, glued to a computer or a radar screen. I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary, I swear. The air was cold, dry, biting. It cut through you, made you pull your jacket a little tighter. I remember that chill in the air like it was a warning, but I didn't think about it back then. It was a routine mission, or so I thought. We were there to test some boring stuff really. The kind of stuff that never gets noticed until something goes wrong. I'd been in the desert long enough to know that it could feel like the world was watching, even if you couldn't see anything. But there was no way I could have prepared for what happened next. It started as a flicker, a light in the sky, just a small one at first. I didn't even want to pay attention to it. There's always something in the sky out here, right? A satellite, a plane, maybe just a star shifting in the night. But then it changed. The light grew brighter, sharper, almost green. I didn't think it was a plane. Too bright, too still. "Hey Jeff," I said, nudging him. "What do you make of that?" He looked up, squinting into the dark sky. "Probably just a satellite or something," he muttered, trying to sound nonchalant. But I could tell he didn't believe it either. None of us really did. The other guys from the base saw it too, but nobody said anything for a while. We all just watched it, quietly, like waiting for it to explain itself. At first, we tried to rationalize it, right? Satellites, maybe even a weather balloon. Something that made sense. But it didn't make sense. Not really. The light didn't move like any of that. It stayed steady, but it changed in color, shifting between green and a faint bluish hue. I felt that knot tighten in my stomach. Something was wrong. And that feeling doesn't go away. Not now. "Maybe it's just a military test," Jeff suggested, but his voice had an edge now. He wasn't so sure anymore. I wanted to believe it was just something explainable, but I couldn't shake the feeling. The way the light didn't flicker like a plane. The way it seemed to hover in place, almost as if it was waiting for us to notice it. And then things started getting stranger. Slowly. The clocks on our equipment started acting funny. It wasn't much at first, just a couple of minutes. But it kept happening. Our phones too drained, like the batteries had been sucked dry. We hadn't been out there long enough for them to be dead. There was something weird about the air, too. It felt heavier, more oppressive. And then, the worst part, the animals. The desert's full of life, even at night. But all of a sudden, it was dead quiet. No sounds from the usual creatures. No rustling of leaves, no insects buzzing. Complete silence. That's when it hit me. Something was wrong. No joke. No rationalizing. Something wasn't right. I turned to Jeff, a chill creeping up my spine. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. He just nodded, his eyes wide. No one said anything. We all knew. The silence in the desert was too heavy now, too unnatural. The light in the sky didn't flicker, didn't make any sound. Just hung there, watching us. And that was when it happened. The air around me, it shifted, like static in the air, like the whole world was holding its breath. Then, a flash, a sudden, bright green flash. I was blinded for a second, my eyes stinging, my ears rang. It was too sharp, too sudden. And then, nothing. The silence returned. Even the wind was gone. I couldn't explain it, but that's when I knew. The feeling of being watched was real, and it wasn't just in my head. I could feel my heart racing, but my body felt frozen. I wasn't sure if I should run or stay. Every instinct told me to look away, but I couldn't. I couldn't take my eyes off the light. Something inside me knew this wasn't just a glitch or a fluke. This was something different, something otherworldly. But I was too scared to even move. I could feel my breath catch in my chest. It wasn't just the cold air. It was the feeling of being watched. My skin prickled, like the desert itself had turned on me. I looked around at the others. Jeff was staring at the light, his face pale. His hands were trembling. No one spoke. No one moved. I kept telling myself it had to be something normal. Military tech, a weather balloon, anything. But the more I watched, the less I believed it. My gut told me this wasn't something we could explain away. My heart pounded in my chest, too fast, too loud. I glanced at my watch, but it was frozen, the second hand motionless. The static in the air felt thicker now, like everything was charged, just waiting for something to break the silence. "Do you see that?" My voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. Jeff didn't answer right away. He just nodded, his eyes wide. He didn't need to say anything. We all knew. We were all thinking the same thing, even though none of us wanted to admit it. That green light? It was real, and it wasn't natural. Then it did something that I can't explain. The light flickered. Not in the way a light bulb does when it's about to go out. No, this was different. It changed its shape. It pulsed like it was breathing, and I could feel it pulling at me. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Something was drawing me in, something deeper than fear, something more primal. "Guys, are we sure that's a plane?" Someone finally spoke, but their voice was weak, uncertain. It was as if they were trying to convince themselves. No one answered. What could you say to that? I kept watching the light. It was hovering, almost motionless in the sky, but it was far too bright, too vivid. It shouldn't have been there. My stomach twisted with anxiety, the kind that's more than just nerves. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting for something, anything. And then it moved, just like that. In an instant, it was no longer in the same place. It shifted. No, it moved in a way that I had never seen. I couldn't even track it with my eyes. One moment, it was hanging in the air like some strange star, and the next, it made a sharp, sudden turn like it was pivoting on a dime. No plane could do that. I had seen military aircraft maneuver, and they didn't move like that. It didn't make sense. I felt my pulse quicken. My breathing got heavier, but still, I couldn't look away. It had to be a trick, right? Some sort of optical illusion or military test. But the more I watched, the less I believed it. My mind raced for a logical explanation, but it couldn't catch up to the speed of what was happening in front of me. The others were quiet. Too quiet. I could feel their eyes on me, but no one dared speak. I wasn't the only one feeling it. I could see it on their faces. Disbelief, fear, uncertainty. We were all caught in the same moment, frozen in the same place. Then, as if it were aware of us, the light shifted again. It wasn't just hovering anymore. It dropped. Not slowly, like a falling star. No, it descended with speed. Too fast to be natural. And in that moment, I felt the world stop. My heart skipped a beat, and my breath hitched. The air there was something about it. Something wrong. It felt thick, almost electric. I could feel it pressing against me. I thought I might suffocate, like the air had turned solid. And then the worst part, the part that still haunts me. It vanished, in an instant, like a dream slipping away. No sound, no flash, just gone. I stood there blinking, trying to catch my breath. Was it really gone? Was I just imagining it? The others were looking around, scanning the sky, searching for something that might explain it. But there was nothing. Just the same cold, quiet desert night. I didn't know what to think. My body felt numb. My mind was racing, but everything inside me felt frozen. I wanted to ask if anyone had seen it, but I already knew the answer. We had all seen it. But that made it worse, didn't it? Because now we were all stuck in the same nightmare. Where the hell did it go? Jeff finally muttered, breaking the silence. His voice was shaky, but I think he felt the same way I did. None of us knew how to explain it, but we all knew we'd seen something that couldn't be explained. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence as before. It was heavier now, thicker, as if the world had paused. No wind, no sounds. Even the air felt still. I could feel it in my bones. But then things got stranger. We all checked our watches. None of them were working right. I thought it was just mine at first, but when I looked around, everyone's was the same, frozen. The second hand wasn't moving. The minute hand stuck at the wrong time. I tried to check my phone, but it was dead. Just dead. It didn't make sense. I walked over to one of the others and asked him if he had checked his car. It was a weird thing to ask, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with everything around us. "Yeah, it won't start," he said, shaking his head. But I swear it was fine earlier. I thought maybe it was just some weird electrical interference. Maybe the strange light had messed with our equipment somehow. But the more I thought about it, the more unsettled I felt. It wasn't just the tech, though. The world felt different. Like something had shifted. I could feel it in my chest. I remember feeling this cold rush of panic, like I had to get out of there. But no one moved. We were all standing still, staring at the empty sky. And then I noticed something. It was hard to describe, just a shift in the atmosphere, but everything around us seemed off, like the air itself had changed. And then it came, the worst part of it all, that feeling. It wasn't fear exactly. It was a presence, something in the air pressing in on us. Not a sound, not a sight, just a feeling that we weren't alone, that something else, something other, was watching us. I don't know how long we stood there, staring at the sky. Time felt like it stretched and bent. I looked at the others, but nobody spoke. Nobody moved. No one dared. Finally, Jeff turned to me, voice trembling. "Did you feel that?" he whispered. I nodded slowly. The feeling lingered. A cold, sharp sense that something was out there, just beyond our reach, watching us. And I couldn't help but wonder, were we alone? Or had something come? My body was still frozen, but my mind was racing. I felt a pulse in my chest, a surge of dread. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't even begin to understand it. But I knew something had changed. And as I stood there in the silence, the weight of it all pressed down on me, and I realized I wasn't the same. None of us were. I turned back to look at the empty sky once more. It was quiet now, too quiet. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Something was still out there. Had it really gone? Or was it just waiting? We didn't speak about what we'd seen, what had happened for a long time. The next few hours were a blur. We all piled into our vehicles and drove back toward camp, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. My hands were still shaking, and every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I half expected to see that green light following us. I wasn't sure if I was more afraid of what I'd seen or the silence that hung in the air, pressing down on us all. When we got back, everything felt off. The tech was still malfunctioning. The clocks wouldn't reset. Nothing worked right. That should have been the first warning sign. I was a contractor, not some scientist, but I knew enough to understand that a simple test shouldn't have left us with dead batteries and malfunctioning equipment. We couldn't explain what had happened. There was no logical answer. No one could make sense of it. It was like the desert itself had shifted under our feet. I remember standing outside, the cold wind biting through my jacket, and just staring at the ground, trying to find some sense of what had happened. There was nothing. No physical traces. No markings on the ground. No sign that anything had even been there. But the air, it wasn't the same. It felt different. Heavier. Like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting for something. I kept running the events over in my head, again and again, trying to convince myself I hadn't imagined it. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how impossible it all was. How could something move like that? Stop on a dime, vanish in an instant? And the way the air had felt, thick, static, unnatural. I'd never experienced anything like it in my life. Then there were the strange side effects. We all felt it. Nausea, dizziness. The strange sensation that the time had shifted. I looked at my watch. It was frozen. My phone was dead, though it had been working fine just an hour before. None of us could explain it. We could only stand there, staring at the sky, wondering if we'd just imagined it all. The military came through the next morning. They told us to forget about it, that it was just a misidentification, maybe a military test, something normal. But they didn't really answer any of our questions. They didn't give us anything, just told us to move on. I heard rumors later though. People who had been involved in similar tests, other contractors, military personnel, they talked about strange happenings in the area. There was talk of aircraft, things that couldn't be identified. People said they'd seen strange lights in the sky before, lights that didn't behave like anything they knew, but no one wanted to go public with it. The military was too quick to cover things up, too eager to silence anyone who spoke up. What bothered me the most, though, was the fact that they had no real explanation. They said it was nothing. A mistake, a misidentification, a test. But how could that be? How could something just vanish like that? How could time just slip away? There were no answers, only more questions. And then came the cover-up. Our tapes. Everything we recorded disappeared. It was like they were wiped clean. Our notes? Gone. We were told it was a technical error, but I knew better. There was something more to it. The men who were there with me, we weren't the only ones who had seen it, but we were the ones who were told to shut up. One by one, the witnesses scattered. Everyone went back to their normal lives. But I couldn't shake the memory. The image of that green light hovering in the desert sky. It burned into my mind. And that's when I realized there's a whole world out there hidden from us. A world we aren't supposed to see. And whatever it was that we saw that night, whatever it was that watched us from above, I knew it wasn't from here. I tried to move on, tried to forget. But the silence kept creeping back. The way the air had felt. The feeling of being so small, so insignificant. Like we were nothing but ants beneath something bigger. I can't shake the thought either. The thought that it's not over. That whatever that thing was, it didn't just leave. No, it waited. I don't know if it's still out there, watching. The men who were with me, they're scattered now. Some of them won't talk about it. Some of them act like nothing happened. But I know they feel it too. They can't shake the memory either. The silence. The way the desert felt wrong. I wonder if it's still out there somewhere, watching, waiting. I've always been the type of person who values logic. I work as a project manager for a tech firm in Las Vegas. I spend my days thinking about deadlines, budgets, and software, not UFOs or aliens. I'd seen all the reports on TV, heard the jokes, but I never gave much weight to any of it. I guess I was like most people, until it happened to me. And now, I don't know what to believe anymore. It was late April, around midnight. The sky was clear and still, the kind of night where everything feels just a little too quiet. I was sitting in my backyard with my brother Ben and my cousin Angel. Nothing extraordinary. Just a few beers and some casual conversation. Las Vegas might be a city of lights, but where we were, out in the east side of town, the stars were the brightest thing in the sky. That night, though, something was off. I just didn't know it yet. We were talking about the usual work, relationships, life, when I noticed it. A small glowing light way off in the distance. At first I thought it was a satellite, something harmless. But as it got closer, I realized this wasn't like anything I'd seen before. It was moving in a way that didn't make sense. I pointed it out to Ben, half expecting him to dismiss it. "Hey Ben, you see that?" I asked, squinting up at the sky. "Probably a plane," he shrugged, but I could tell he was watching it closely now. Or a drone, maybe. I wasn't so sure. This thing wasn't acting like a plane or a drone. It was too smooth, too controlled. It didn't seem to move with any kind of normal pattern. I checked my phone. No signal. Not that we needed it to see the strange light in the sky, but it was just one of those little details that stuck with me. Angel noticed it too. "What is that?" she asked, her voice tinged with confusion. She stood up, squinting at the sky, her body rigid, as though she were trying to make sense of it. We watched it for a few minutes, no one speaking. It moved, not erratically, but almost like it was intentionally positioning itself, like it was studying us. I tried to rationalize it, even joked to myself that maybe it was just a satellite or a weather balloon, but something about it didn't sit right. I glanced at my watch. It was dead, just stopped. I shook it, as if that would help. I wasn't thinking much of it then, but I still remember the moment. It was almost like the world itself had paused. I glanced over at Ben. He was looking at me now, his usual confidence replaced with uncertainty. "It's just a plane," he said, but his voice didn't sound sure. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the light. It was too bright, too still. The longer I looked at it, the more I could feel this strange pressure building in my chest, like the air was getting heavier, denser. It was almost like something was watching us. I glanced at Angel again. She was staring at the sky, her eyes wide. "That thing's not moving like a plane. It's not moving like anything I've ever seen," she said softly. I knew she was right, but I still didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe any of it. I mean, who would? It's crazy, right? Then, without any warning, the light flickered. A flash, bright and blinding. My breath caught in my throat. It didn't look like any light I'd ever seen before. It wasn't just a flash. It felt like the air itself had shifted, and I could hear a strange pressure in my ears. It wasn't painful, but it was unsettling. "What the hell was that?" I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. Ben didn't answer. He was still staring up, his mouth slightly open, his face pale. I glanced at Angel. She was shaking her head, her face ashen. I was trying to figure out what was happening, but my mind just couldn't catch up with what my eyes were seeing. We stood there in silence for a few seconds, just staring at the sky. Then it happened again. Another flash, this time even brighter. It was like the entire sky was lighting up. I could feel my body tense up, my legs almost locking in place as if I wasn't supposed to move. "Ben," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me you see that too." Ben just nodded, his eyes fixed on the light. "What the hell is that?" he muttered, more to himself than to me. That's when the silence hit us. Everything went still. Not just the air, but the world around us. No crickets. No cars passing. No wind. Nothing. The usual hum of the night was gone, replaced by something heavier. The pressure in the air felt like it was pushing down on us. I looked at my phone again, but it was still dead. No signal. No explanation. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like the world had stopped around us, and we were the only ones left. "Angel," I said, my voice tight. "Do you hear that?" She looked at me, her eyes wide. "No," she said softly. It's too quiet." That's when I noticed the first truly odd thing. The clock on the wall had stopped. I checked it. 12:03 a.m. But I could have sworn I looked at it just seconds ago, and it had been ticking. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I didn't say anything at first, not wanting to sound paranoid, but there was no denying it anymore. Something was wrong. The light was still there, but now it was moving. Not like before. It was fast. Too fast. One moment it was stationary, and the next it zipped across the sky in an instant. I couldn't follow it. It was too fast. "We need to go inside," Angel said, her voice shaking. She was looking around like she was waiting for something. I didn't want to admit it, but I was feeling it too. The pull, the urge to run, to get away from whatever this was. But I couldn't look away. I couldn't stop staring. And then, just like that, the light was gone. Completely vanished. No trace. No noise. No indication of where it had gone. For a moment, none of us spoke. The air still felt thick. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I didn't know what I was feeling. Relief, confusion, terror? I wanted to rationalize it all, but every instinct told me that something had just happened, something real. But what was it? "Did that just happen?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Ben was still standing there, his eyes darting around. "I don't know," he said quietly. "I don't know what we just saw." And that's when I knew we weren't just imagining it. Whatever it was real. But even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The thing is, I didn't know how to process what happened. You'd think that if you saw something that couldn't be explained, you'd go straight into shock, right? But I didn't. I just stood there, frozen, still trying to convince myself that it was just some trick of the light, or maybe a new drone, or anything. Anything that wasn't what I thought it might be. But Ben didn't look like he was buying any of those excuses. His face was pale. He was still staring at the sky, eyes wide, like he was waiting for it to return. And Angel was shaking. She was on the verge of tears, her eyes darting around like she was expecting something else to appear. Her voice was trembling when she finally spoke. "We need to go inside," she said, her words quiet but urgent. I can't stay out here anymore. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay, to figure it out. But there was this horrible feeling in my gut. Something wasn't right. Not just with the sky, but with everything. The air felt heavier, thicker. The quiet felt unnatural, too perfect. But the moment Angel spoke, I felt it too. I didn't want to admit it, but I felt the urge to run, to get away from whatever that thing was. I turned to Ben. "Ben, you good?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I needed him to say something that would make sense of this. "Yeah," he replied, but he didn't look at me. He was still staring at the empty sky. I grabbed his arm. "Ben, we need to get inside." That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The silence wasn't just around us. It was everything. The hum of the city that usually echoed in the distance. The usual sounds of night cars, animals, even the wind. It was all gone. It was like the world had just turned off, and when I looked at my phone again, it was still dead. No signal. No, nothing. The battery was fine when I checked earlier. This wasn't normal. I tried to shake it off, to keep my mind grounded, but the feeling in my chest was growing stronger, more pressing. We started walking back toward the house, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and my breath felt too shallow. I glanced over at Angel, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me, her face pale. She didn't say anything, but I could tell she was scared. More scared than I'd ever seen her. I tried to ignore the unease creeping up my spine, but when we reached the back door, it was locked. Ben hadn't even noticed, but I had. The door had been unlocked when we went outside. It wasn't something I could explain, but it was just wrong. It felt like the world was starting to break apart. "Ben," I said, my voice a little louder now. "The door's locked." He didn't even react. He was still looking up, still searching the sky like he thought it would come back. I had to shake him. "Ben," I repeated, louder this time. "The door's locked. We need to get inside." He blinked, as if waking from a trance. He walked toward the door and fumbled with the lock, but when he opened it, we all just stood there. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, and the air was still thick, like it had changed somehow. The house felt different now too. It was like the walls were pressing in on me. The silence was worse inside, suffocating. There were no comforting sounds of the air conditioner or the fridge running. Nothing. Just stillness. "Where's the TV remote?" Angel asked, her voice small, trembling. I turned to look. It was gone. The remote, which had been sitting on the table just before we went outside, was nowhere to be found. Now I was sure something was wrong. I looked at Ben, trying to piece it all together. I couldn't explain why the door had locked itself, why the remote had disappeared, or why the air felt so thick with tension. It didn't make sense. We sat down, huddled together in the living room, trying to calm ourselves, but none of us could shake the feeling that something was watching us. We didn't speak for a long time. It was just the three of us, each of us trapped in our own thoughts, the fear settling deep in our bones. That's when the power cut out. Just gone. No warning. The lights flickered, then died completely. It was pitch black. I could feel my pulse quicken as I fumbled for my phone again, only to find it was still dead. "We need to leave," Angel said, standing up, her voice barely audible. "Now." We all moved toward the door in a hurry, but Ben stopped us. He pointed toward the window, his finger shaking. I turned, looking out into the backyard. What I saw made my breath catch. The sky, which had been empty just moments ago, now had a faint glow to it. "Ben," I whispered, "what is that?" There, hovering above the ground, was a small, glowing orb. It was the same light we had seen earlier, but now it was closer. Too real. It was just hanging there, suspended in the air. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. It was just there, glowing softly, almost like it was waiting for us. And then, without warning, it darted straight up, faster than any plane I'd ever seen. I could barely track it, but in the time it took for me to blink, it was gone. Just like that. I could feel the air shift again, like a weight had been lifted. But I couldn't explain what had happened. I didn't know if I should feel relieved or terrified. My heart was still pounding. My hands were shaking. And when I looked at Ben and Angel, I could see they felt the same. "We need to talk about this," I said, my voice shaking despite myself. Ben turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Talk about what?" he said, his voice almost too calm. "There's nothing to talk about." But we both knew there was, because what had just happened. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't normal, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over yet. The following days were a blur. I tried to convince myself it had all been some strange coincidence, some odd collective imagination. Maybe the stress had caught up with us. Maybe we were all just tired. But the more I thought about it, the more everything felt wrong. The first thing I noticed was the power cut. It was late morning when it happened, and there was no storm, no reason for it. The house just went completely dark. No flickering lights, no surge, just a sudden, complete blackout. I thought I was imagining it. But then I realized Angel wasn't moving. Her eyes were glued to the corner of the room. She didn't even blink. "What's wrong?" I asked, but she didn't answer. Her voice was frozen, like she was holding back something she didn't want to say. "Angel," I said again, but she just nodded toward the window. There was a faint glow outside, not like daylight, but something unnatural. It was dim, almost like the same light we'd seen in the sky. But now it was closer. I went to the window and looked out. My pulse quickened. There, in the backyard, was the same orb. The same one from the night before. It was hanging there in the air, completely still, almost like it was waiting for us. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to do. I looked back at Angel. She was shaking now, the fear clear in her face. Ben was already at the door, muttering to himself, pacing back and forth. He was trying to act calm, like he was still in control, but I could see the panic in his eyes. His hands were shaking. He wasn't sure what to do anymore. I was still standing by the window, frozen. The orb hadn't moved, but something in the air felt thick, like the world was holding its breath. "Ben," I said softly, "what if it's here for us?" He turned to me, his voice low and shaky. "I don't know. I don't know anymore." We all stood there, the room thick with tension. The strange glow outside was now intensifying, brighter, sharper. My mind raced. There had to be a logical explanation, right? But no matter how hard I tried to rationalize it, nothing made sense. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. This wasn't normal. Then the orb did something that sent every nerve in my body into overdrive. It moved. Slow at first, almost like it was testing the air. But then it darted across the backyard, way faster than anything I've ever seen. I couldn't track it with my eyes. It moved too quickly, then stopped. No sound, no change in the air, just gone. Gone. For a moment, the world felt still again, like nothing had ever happened. I turned to Ben and Angel, my breath coming in shallow bursts. "Did you see that?" Ben nodded but didn't say anything. His eyes were wide. He was staring at the empty space in the yard where the orb had been. "Where did it go?" Angel whispered. "Why did it leave?" I didn't have an answer. I could feel something deep in my gut, a gnawing unease. It wasn't over. I knew that. Whatever had been out there wasn't done with us. We stayed inside the house for the rest of the day. None of us spoke much, and I could tell we were all trying to make sense of what we had seen, but nothing lined up. The night before, the object had been clear, tangible, real. Today, it was like a bad memory, fading in and out of focus. Later that night, I went to bed, but sleep didn't come. I kept hearing noises, small, almost imperceptible sounds coming from outside. It was like I could still feel it hovering there, watching. I kept checking the time, but the clock was always the same, 12:03 a.m., over and over. It was like time had stopped. At one point, I looked outside. The sky was dark. No lights. No stars. No sign of anything unusual. Just quiet. But the quiet was worse than anything else. It felt like the calm before a storm. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. The next morning, everything seemed normal again. The lights were on, the power was back, and life carried on as if nothing had happened. But it had happened. I knew it. We all knew it. And then there were the small things, the little nagging details that didn't add up, like how Ben's car, still parked in the same spot, was now facing the opposite direction, the fact that Angel couldn't remember the last few hours from the night before. And when I checked my phone, it was the same. No record of the time between 11:30 p.m. and 2 a.m. It was like that night had been erased. We didn't talk about it much after that, but the unease lingered. Angel started getting these terrible headaches, and Ben began to pull away, talking less about the night. I could see it on their faces. The fear, the disbelief. But we were all trying to move on, to pretend it hadn't happened, that everything was normal. But I could feel the truth in my bones. Something had changed. Days turned into weeks and nothing major happened. Life went on, but we weren't the same. We couldn't be. I couldn't look at the sky without feeling that old, gnawing fear, and I couldn't shake the thought of that orb, the way it had moved, the way it had watched us. And then, just when I thought I could finally put it all behind me, I saw something I'll never forget. It was late, around midnight again. I was standing in the kitchen, trying to shake off the weird feeling that had been bothering me all day. I looked out the window, and there it was, the orb, hovering just like before. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't sure if I should go outside, call someone, or just leave. But I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring, my heart hammering in my chest. And then it was gone, just like that. The feeling of it lingering in the air, though, that didn't go away. I'll never be the same. And the worst part is, I don't know what it wants. I don't know why it's still here. What do you think? Is it really over? Or is something waiting for us, just out of sight?